Hello, and welcome to Inside the Helmet. This is episode one. My name is Michael, and I will be your host. Um, welcome to the show. This is going to be a podcast where I talk about sports, to put it the most simply. I've been around sports, particularly football, American football, for my whole life. And I feel like over the course of my career playing football, I've attained a certain amount of knowledge and understanding and well based opinions about the game. And so I want this to be an outlet where I can share those and connect with other people who also have opinions and create this sort of discourse. That's actually kind of where the Inside the Helmet name comes from. I have been a quarterback for the better part of my life. I'm currently a collegiate quarterback at the Division III level. Um, and so I have a lengthy history of knowledge and whatnot attained from that career that is still ongoing. As well, other than football, I do like other sports, namely Formula One racing, which is also the second reason for the Inside the Helmet name. It's kind of linking my two favorite sports together to create a clever name. Um, I'll also talk about things like basketball and baseball. Football and F1 racing are probably going to be the two main focuses throughout this show. Anyway, now that introduction's out of the way, I want to first hit on football because the NFL season's just started, and so I wanted to kind of give my thoughts on week one to open up our show. I want to get it out of the way, first of all, that I am a Dallas Cowboys fan. I know. I can hear the comments already. But give me a little slack. My family growing up, we're all Cowboys fans, and they are the local team as I'm from Texas. So it makes sense. All right. I'm not one of those Cowboys, Lakers, Yankees fans. All right. Um, anyway, I want to talk about, first of all, how our game against the Eagles went last Thursday. Um, Given the recency of the Micah Parsons trade, I feel like everybody was kind of expecting us to walk into Philly and get absolutely smacked around. And you know what? I'll admit it. I didn't have the highest hopes. Well, I had the highest hopes. I didn't have the highest expectations. I kind of thought that we were going to walk into our casket in Philadelphia, but I was pleasantly surprised. Our offense, particularly, at least for the first three quarters, instilled a good amount of confidence going forward. Dak looked really good. He was hitting on his throws, making good decisions and whatnot. Our run game looked really strong, especially for that one drive where Miles Sanders ended up fumbling. Um, our run game looked good all game. Anyway, and then after the lightning delay, everything was just so stagnant on both sides, both teams. So I'm not too worried about that. Those are minor things that can get hashed out in practice over the course of the season. CeeDee Lamb, of course, having a few crucial drops. He's human. He's going to do that. He's going to drop the football every now and then. It's just really unfortunate that it happened to be at that critical moment in the game. But again, I believe in CD. He's our guy. You know, he'll bounce back. I mean, everyone saw the posts on social media about he went on the Cowboys off day early in the morning to go use the jugs machine and catch footballs and whatnot to try and fix that error. So I believe that that will not be an ongoing issue. What I do believe will be an ongoing issue is our defense. Our pass rush might as well be non existent. I think a JV high school 1A offensive line probably could have done a decent job against our pass rush. That was abysmal. Jalen Hurts, I understand the Eagles have a top tier offensive line in football, even with Jason Kelsey being retired now and all that. They're still very dominant. But still, Jalen Hurts could have recorded his own podcast in the pocket. Goodness. Um, we desperately needed Micah Parsons on Thursday. He would have fit right in. I saw a post on social media kind of joking like, if only the Cowboys had a dominant pass rusher that could get to Jalen Hurts. Like, yeah, no kidding. Um, that's really unfortunate. And then turning around on Sunday and seeing him getting his first sack as a Packer on Jared Goff, that was very bittersweet. And the problem is, it is so bittersweet because his attitude and his demeanor towards the team was not hopeful, it was not inspiring. It did not exactly make me say, oh, yeah, we can't stand to lose that guy. He's such a great guy. Obviously he has skills that speak for themselves, but his demeanor was just not mature at all. And I didn't appreciate that. That was the one aspect that I was actually kind of happy to see him go. That diva aspect of his personality. I know I say that while I'm recording a podcast, something that he very famously does himself. Um, but yeah, so I am hopeful coming out of the Philadelphia game that we have a good foundation that we can build on over the course of the season and possibly make the playoffs, honestly. Before the season, I was thinking it was kind of a long shot just because I feel like we didn't really have a whole lot of identity, with the new head coach and losing Micah and all that stuff. I felt like we were kind of a shell of the team we were a couple years ago. But honestly, I think we could sneak in. I think we have a pretty high ceiling, and we showed some of that potential against Philadelphia. We just weren't able to close it out. But I think we'll get better at that over the course of the year. Um, Next, before we transition to talking about Formula One to close out the show, I want to give my prediction, my simple who will win each matchup for this upcoming NFL week. So I'm recording this on Thursday, September 11th, and tonight we have the Commanders and the Packers. I believe that the Packers are going to beat Washington. Everyone thought going into this year that the Lions were going to be yet again, one of the powerhouses. That feels so weird to say, Lions being a powerhouse. But that's the reality of the last couple of years, and the Packers made them look very silly. Micah Parsons looked very threatening, of course, as always. He's certainly still a force to be reckoned with, and I don't know. I just feel like this is one where the Packers maybe have the more complete roster and whatnot, and it's going to be a good game. I would not be surprised in the slightest if Washington wins. I would be surprised if either team wins by a whole wide margin. I think this will be a close game, but I think the Packers are narrowly going to take it. Next up, I have the Cowboys beating the Giants. Not just saying that because I'm a Cowboys fan. I genuinely believe the Giants look terrible. I feel like that's not a very hot take either. So I'm not even going to spend too much time on it. Cowboys over the Giants. And I think Russell Wilson's time as the starter will not last a whole lot longer, unfortunately. I like him, but I feel like they have too much stock in Jackson Dart to not play him soon, especially if Russ isn't winning games. Next, I have the Steelers beating the Seahawks. I kind of feel like the Seahawks are in a similar situation to what I thought the Cowboys were in going into the season, where they kind of didn't have much identity. I mean, they just lost their starting quarterback, Geno Smith. I mean, it kind of feels like how it did in the preseason a couple years ago when they just lost Russell Wilson, and there was this uncertainty of how Geno Smith was going to do, and then he, of course, did real well, and now they're trading Geno Smith in for Sam Darnold, who of course did really well with the Vikings last year, but I don't know if he's going to replicate that same level of production. And so I feel like the Pete Carroll less Seahawks just don't have much identity. They're not a very notable team, and Aaron Rodgers looked absolutely on fire last week, and so I'm going to give it to the Steelers. Next up, the Rams and the Titans. I have the Titans winning this one. I know they lost last week to the Broncos, who didn't look all that great, but they still have an undeniably great defense. And of course, the Titans receivers did not do Cam Ward any favors, but I feel that Cam Ward himself looked really good, really confident. And so I just think that this is going to be one of those weeks, even if the Titans aren't all that great of a team, just because of inconsistency, I think this is going to be one of those weeks where they do kind of put their stuff together and pull out the win. So I have the Titans over the Rams. Next up, the Bills are beating the Jets. I mean, come on. The Bills are maybe definitely the best team in the NFL right now. Josh Allen is looking like he could very well be on his way to a second MVP in a row, possibly even a Super Bowl run. And the Jets are the Jets. I understand they look good against the Steelers last week, but they're not playing the Steelers this week. They're playing Josh Allen, and after what they pulled off Sunday night against the Ravens, I would believe it if Josh Allen could throw a football to Mars. Honestly, I don't think there's anything he can't do. So yeah. Next up, an absolute disgusting matchup, the Patriots and the Dolphins. I have the Patriots winning, not necessarily because I think the Patriots are all that good. I just think that the Dolphins are maybe the worst team in the NFL. And again, I don't think that's a very hot take. So I think this is just lesser of two garbage teams going to come out on top. I think it's going to be an ugly, ugly game. And I think Mike McDaniel will be fired before week 5. That's my prediction. Next up, I have the Bengals beating the Jaguars. I know the Bengals played a very ugly, ugly game against the Browns. But it's the week 1 Bengals. Usually they don't even win. Usually they play ugly and they lose. But they were able to get the win because they were playing the Cleveland Browns. But I think the Bengals, of course, recently have been in the Joe Burrow era anyway, a start slow team that they usually struggle in the first 3-4 weeks of the season, and so I would honestly believe it if they just put up a stinker and Jacksonville walked all over them just for no reason. But I just think the Bengals are the better team on paper, and they should win this game, despite the narrative of them being so bad in the start of the season. Next up, I actually have the Saints beating the 49ers. We found out, I think today, as I'm recording this, that Brock Purdy is going to be out like 2 to 5 weeks or something with an injury. And George Kittle also got injured last week. And so I think the 49ers are kind of falling into the same position they did last year, same position they did a few years ago, where they went from like being in the Super Bowl or around the Super Bowl to then suddenly being absolutely terrible. And all that. So I think the Saints are somehow going to win this game against a very, very injury ridden 49ers team. Next up, maybe the most lopsided game of the week. The Ravens are going to walk all over the Cleveland Browns, and that's not even up for debate. I don't care who the Browns put under center; they are not going to beat the Ravens, and that's just no. Um, Next, a game that could honestly be surprisingly close, because both teams kind of had their moments where they looked really bad last week. I have the Lions beating the Bears. Of course, the Bears, for some time on Monday night against the Vikings, looked pretty good. You know, Caleb Williams had them driving and all that. They actually looked very competent, you know, like they were somebody other than the Bears. But then the clock struck midnight and they reverted back to the old Chicago Bears that don't know what offense is. Um, and while I know the Lions struggled against the Packers and whatnot, I think the Lions are still going to pull it out because they, overall, top to bottom, are the much more complete team. And I think they're going to go in there and take care of business. It may look a little ugly at times. I think it's going to be a sloppy game, honestly, but I think the Lions are going to come out on top. Next, I have the Colts beating the Broncos. The Broncos looked a little underwhelming against the Titans, from what I recall last week, but they were still able to get the win. I think their offense, particularly, didn't look all that great. But it's just 1 week. I think Bo Nix can bounce back and play kind of how people were hyping him up last year and whatnot. Um, but I still have them falling to the Colts because, goodness gracious, Indiana Daniel Jones looked just absolutely perfect. I know it was against the Dolphins, but I mean, some of those throws were beautiful. I mean, this looks like a completely different man than the guy we saw getting eaten alive and made fun of and memed to death when he was on the Giants. So I have the Colts going and beating a formidable defense in the Broncos. Next up, another boring game. I think the Cardinals are just going to beat the Panthers. Kind of like the Patriots and the Dolphins. Not even necessarily because I'm super high on the Cardinals. I just am even lower on the Panthers. You know, they're another team fighting for that worst team in football distinction. So I think the Cardinals are going to win in very unspectacular fashion. Um, Flipping it right around, our rematch of last year's Super Bowl. It pains me to say this, I have the Eagles winning over the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know, the Chiefs just don't feel all that threatening. I was seeing posts online, people talking about, oh, what happened to Mahomes' deep ball, and that's kind of how I feel about it. There were multiple kind of deep shots that he kind of had to have in that game against the Chargers, and he just wasn't able to connect. He was just off. He just missed. Um, and they lost Xavier Worthy, and whatnot. So I think the Eagles are just the more, I say more disciplined, after the whole Jalen Carter incident. I know that's kind of ironic, but other than him, I feel like they're the more well-rounded, well-put-together team. I feel like the Chiefs probably still have a much higher ceiling and upside, but I just don't think that they're as consistent as the Chiefs that we've seen in the past. I don't think they're as capable of reaching their upper limits of potential as they have been in recent years. So I have the Eagles winning against the Chiefs. Next up, just three more games. I have the Vikings beating the Falcons. Um, I maybe I'm just delusional because of fourth quarter JJ McCarthy, but if he comes out, honestly, this all depends on what JJ McCarthy we see. If we see the version from the last 20 minutes of the game against Chicago, then the Vikings could very well put 40 on the Falcons. That looked honestly incredible, especially given his inexperience. However, if we see the version that we got for the first, you know, 2.5 quarters of football against the Bears, I think the Falcons could very well walk away with this one, and actually close it out, unlike the Bears did. But I think that JJ McCarthy is only going to build on last week's performance, and so I think the Vikings are going to get the job done. Next, I have the Buccaneers beating the Texans. Um, Kind of a similar situation to the Eagles and Chiefs, but just on a smaller scale. I feel like the Texans probably are more talented overall. Like high ceiling type of deal. But the Buccaneers are just the more consistent and grounded team. Baker has so much more experience than CJ Stroud, and since his rookie year, we haven't seen a whole lot of that same magic from CJ Stroud that we got in his rookie year. So I don't really know what to make of the Texans. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they great? Are they awful? I don't know. I think the Buccaneers are just going to win this one. And finally, I have the Chargers walking all over the Raiders. I don't think this one's up for debate either. Justin Herbert also had a somewhat MVP like performance last week against Kansas City on Friday night. Came through in the clutch, did what he needed to do, took care of business, took care of the reigning AFC champs, and he looked really good. He looked like he was finally living up to that potential that people always say he has. And I'm a big believer in Justin Herbert. I always have been. I've always been on that train of he doesn't have a defense, he doesn't have good coaching and all that. I think he's finally kind of going to start putting it all together. And also the Raiders, I just don't care about the Raiders. I don't believe in them whatsoever. I'm not afraid of the Las Vegas Raiders in the slightest. Yeah, that has been my predictions for every single week 2 NFL game. And now I would like to transition into talking a little bit about F1, just a little bit to close it out, because that, like I mentioned, that is my other great sporting passion. And so I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on both of those topics today. Kind of like how I told y'all at the beginning that I'm a Cowboys fan, I want to get this out there that I'm a Max Verstappen fan when it comes to F1. Um, I'm not necessarily a Red Bull fan. I am truly just a Max fan. If Max were to pack his bags and go to Alpine tomorrow, I'd end up buying a hat. I think Red Bull is a very dysfunctional organization as of current times. Of course, it hasn't always been that way, but just in the last 2 years or so, they've just become so dysfunctional with all the Christian Horner drama and Adrian Newey leaving. And I just believe Max is the only thing keeping them from being a bottom 3 team in F1 right now. Um, anyway, of course, if you are an F1 fan, you know how Monza went. Of course, great day if you are a Max fan, but also kind of a frustrating day in general if you like good, fair, uninterrupted by team dynamics racing. Because of course, the race was pretty boring after the first few laps when Max retook the lead and just ran off into the sunset, which is awesome. But then we had the McLaren drama with the pit stops and them ordering Oscar to give the position back because Lando had a slow stop and all that. And I don't necessarily have the most controversial opinion on this because I've seen other people talking about it and saying the same exact thing, but I think even Oscar said this, but a slow pit stop, that's just part of racing. Obviously, it's unfortunate and you never want that to happen, but it's the same as a DNF. It's the same as when Lando's engine or whatever was wrong with his car in the Netherlands caused him to have to retire. I mean, what are they going to do? Like this obsession that McLaren seemed to have with making everything as fair as possible for their two drivers is absolutely killing all the excitement, all the drama, all the like just good genuine moments of the season, of this title fight. You know, this has been, I've seen a lot of people saying it, this has been the most boring and lame title fight that we've ever seen. Because, I mean, they're more focused on being teammates than they are on being like a world champion. I imagine if in 2016, I mean, Lewis and Nico, they would have never given up a position to one another. You know, and they're in the middle of a brutal title fight, and if McLaren want this to be an entertaining, true blood, sweat, and tears title fight like all the fans want, they need to stop this nonsense. I mean, okay, yeah, I'm sorry your golden boy, isn't the one leading the championship and getting all the lucky breaks and all that, but this is just absurd. It's ruining the integrity of the sport. It's over politicizing and they're micromanaging everything, and I just hate it. That genuinely this level of dominance could not have happened to a less deserving team. Like they are the most sore winners I have ever seen. It is embarrassing. If I was a McLaren fan, I would be embarrassed by the inner politics and drama that McLaren are doing to micromanage the results of every race because they have the car to win every race. They should be finishing 1 and 2 every race, but they aren't because they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're getting in their own way. Max is just a demon. Uh, yeah. But that brings me to Azerbaijan, our next race that we have next week. Um, of course, the track that Oscar won at last year. I feel like Oscar's gonna be strong. I don't think Lando will necessarily put up the stinker that he did last year, at least in qualifying. I think he'll end up qualifying on the first 2 rows. Um, and he'll be up there fighting for the win. I think Max will also obviously be up there. I actually don't think Max is going to win this. Well, no, yeah, I don't think he's going to win this race. I think Oscar is going to win this race. I think Max maybe will come second, and Lando third. My official podium prediction is the two McLarens joined by Max on the podium. Oscar, hard prediction, is going to win that race. That's set in stone. I think I want to predict that Max will finish P2, Lando will finish P3. I know a lot of Max's success in Italy, in our most recent race, was due to the low downforce setup that he had. Of course, on a very low downforce focused track. And that brought him great pace and great success. But Baku is just way too tight in the castle section. Of course, they have that long straightaway, but other than that, they're going to need more downforce, and I feel like downforce is an area that Red Bull have greatly been struggling with lately this season. So I don't think Max is going to win this, and in general, that will open up my prediction for the championship. I It hurts to say this because with all my heart, I want Max to somehow pull it together, win every single remaining race in a row. Oscar and Lando have a couple DNFs, mechanical issues, whatnot, combined with just the right amount of P2s and P3s that Max is able to just win the title. But that's too unrealistic. McLaren are not going to not win that many races. And certainly, I don't even think Max is going to be the lead non-McLaren in every single one of those races. That's just unrealistic. George is going to have a race here or there where he gets back on the podium. Leclerc as well. Could always get another surprise podium. Maybe Lewis will finally get up there. Or Kimmy, of course. But I think Oscar is going to wrap up this championship very nicely. I don't think McLaren. I don't think Lando has what it takes to claw back that deficit. If anyone does, it is Max, but the deficit that Max has to overcome is almost impossible for anybody to overcome. I just don't think that he has the machinery to do so, especially considering it's not just that he would have to win every race, it's that Oscar and Lando would have to have their fair share of like P2s and P3s in a specific way, and I think each of them would have to have one or two DNFs to offset the point difference. So Oscar Piastri, my prediction for the 2025 F1 Drivers' Champion. McLaren, of course, only need to, what is it? They only need to score like 9 points or whatever in this race to become the Constructors' Champions already, which is just insane. They have like nearly 3 times Ferrari's points or whatever. So, I'm obviously, hot take, McLaren Constructors' Champions. But yeah, it's not looking too good for Max. But after Italy, it is looking like we can still have some good fights at the front, fights for the win and whatnot to close out this season and this regulation cycle. Um, but yeah, I think that is all the time we have for today. So I want to thank you for tuning in to episode 1 of the Inside the Helmet podcast. I'm going to try, obviously, it was just me today, but I'm going to try in the future episodes to maybe get some guests on here, some friends, family, whatnot, to talk, and we can have more of a discussion because I think that would be just better content overall, be more enjoyable. And so, yeah, but I hope you like this first episode. It'd be great if you could share this and download and do all that fun stuff. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next episode.